Hello everyone. I would like to begin by thanking you for having me in this important event. My name is Muayad Jajo. Today's presentation is about some textbooks that are used in universities, adopted in many academic institutions, which teach academic English to, of course, university level students. Now, the problem with these texts is that they have many passages that are provided as samples of academic English, but in fact they contain many unacademic aspects. And teachers feel stuck with these textbooks because they cannot change them, and at the same time they have to teach them to their students. So how to go about teaching these texts is the subject of this presentation. Now, the case study I am using here is the Longman Academic Writing Series, and this is a 5-volume series. I'm using volume 3, Paragraphs to Essays. And I have selected a passage from page 32 on earthquakes. And this is a paragraph which is given as a model of academic writing. But in fact, if any instructor goes through the passage, they will find plenty of unacademic elements. At the same time, there are good academic elements. So this is a sample paragraph taken from this series. You can see the paragraph here on this slide. The title is Earthquake. So when I give this paragraph to my students, I ask them to read it, then I cannot really tell them that this paragraph is an example to follow on academic writing, because it contains several unacademic elements. So what I do is that I show them both. I show them the academic elements in the passage and at the same time the unacademic ones. In this way, I'm going to boost their awareness about academic writing. So they are exposed to a mixture of both let's say the good and the bad, good writing and bad writing. And when they're exposed to both, they will know later on how to write good academic paragraphs. So this is a mini model of how I teach this paragraph to the students. First of all, I ask them to read the paragraph carefully in class. So I give them like about, let's say, 5 minutes to read the paragraph. And then I analyze it sentence by sentence. So if we take the first sentence, for example, I went through an unforgettable experience when a magnitude 6.9 earthquake hit California. So I tell them that if you approach this sentence academically, you will find that some elements are not really academic. So I could be considered in academic writing as a no-no, because we are constantly asked in academic writing when we're generating scientific papers to avoid first-person pronouns like I and we. But let's keep it that way. I'll just ask them, to avoid it. So this is a violation, let's say, of the academic principles of writing, but we're gonna keep it as is. I went through an unforgettable experience. Now, I also tell my students that in academic writing, especially writing scientific research papers, they have to use measurable words. Let's say by measurable words, I mean words that refer to something which could be measured. Even adjectives. When we use adjectives, we use adjectives that specify weight or an experience, height, anything that is specific. So, like, unforgettable is an adjective that does not really refer to some quantity or some measurable amount or any like specific entity. So an unforgettable experience, does it mean that you can never forget it? And who is involved here? Unforgettable experience could apply to one individual, a group of individuals. Does it apply to all the human race? So it's not really specific, it's not measurable. It is something that also, it's something that belongs to the future, let's say, because unforgettable means unforgettable. Does this mean that it was unforgettable in the past and then it was forgettable? Is it unforgettable now? Is it going to be unforgettable for forever? So what does this mean? And if it refers to the future, that a group of individuals are not going to forget this, how can we tell? How can we tell if this experience is unforgettable in the future or not? We don't have data about the future. We have to wait and see if those individuals involved are going to forget it or not. So this word unforgettable is not really an academic word. It's not part of the academic vocabulary that scientists should use. And then when a magnitude 6.9, now that's okay. This is a good example of academic writing, because we have specified the strength of the earthquake. We are giving the reader numerical data, 6.9, so they already know how strong the earthquake is. And then if we move on to the next sentence, it says, it happened over a weekend when my parents were working at our family's restaurant. Now, it happened is fine, happened is fine, but we have a set of academic vocabulary we should stick to. So occurred would be more academic than happened. Happened is more conversational. Over a weekend. Now, another problem here related to measurability is it happened over a weekend. Which weekend? So it's better here, if we want to be academically specific, we have to mention exactly the date, and time of the earthquake. Over a weekend, which weekend? It's not clear. When my parents were working at our family's restaurant, again, here you might, it wouldn't be really too much to ask for the name of the restaurant, the location, for example. So setting here is very important to mention. My older sister, my younger brother, and I were home alone. Again, that's too conversational. This gives you the idea that the writer is not really producing an academic piece of work. The writer is producing a reflective essay, personal essay, not an academic essay. because when he says my older sister and younger brother, we're not given details as to their names and age. So it would be better to give details about them. We're home alone. Suddenly, that's the next sentence. Suddenly, our apartment started shaking. We don't see any problem with this sentence. Suddenly, our apartment started shaking, except for the fact that it would be better if the writer mentioned the exact time. Instead of suddenly, they could have said at like 8:40 a.m., 5:42 p.m. That would be more academic. And then, at first, none of us realized what was happening. Well, what was happening? I mean, this is more suitable for literary texts. So in literary discourse, you use suspense, but in academic writing, definitely you use facts, and you avoid the element of creating the element of suspense. Then my sister began to scream. Well, okay. It's an earthquake. Get under something. Now, this quotations, direct quotations, are something to avoid in academic writing. It's better to use reported speech instead of direct speech. And then I have, the speaker is referring to himself, I have rolled and have crawled across the room to get under the dining table. Now, I have rolled and have crawled. Half rolled. What's the meaning of half rolled and half crawled? It means like I crawled and rolled at the same time. But the use of half is, again, a bit ambiguous, because if a scientist is reading this passage for analysis, for example, for some kind of scientific analysis, they would definitely wonder, like, how half? How much did you crawl? What's the percentage of rolling and what's the percentage of crawling? It's not very clear as to how much you crawled and how much you rolled. So in academic writing, when you're producing a scientific research paper, this would definitely not be acceptable. My brother was in his bedroom, so my sister yelled to him to get under his desk. Now, by using the word "so" here, we are introducing the concept of causality. So we have cause and effects. Where's the cause and where's the effect? My brother was in his bedroom, so my sister yelled to him to get under his desk. Well, does this mean that that there's some kind of weak causality here? Like, is it because he was in his bedroom that she asked him to get under the desk? It's the causality is weak. It's like saying because he was in his bedroom, she said that. So what if he was in another room? She wouldn't have asked him to, like, get under a desk. That's weak causality. Meanwhile, my sister was on the floor of the kitchen, holding her arms over her head to protect herself from falling dishes. Well, that's okay. That sounds like he's giving facts. So it's okay. The sentence sounds factual. The earthquake continued for approximately a minute. Well, again, there's a problem here with measurability, with accuracy. Approximately a minute. How much was the duration of the earthquake? A minute? Less than a minute? More than a minute? How less? How more? It's not clear. But it seemed like a year to us. Now, we don't use analogy in scientific research papers, because analogy is used only when there is similarity which is specified. Otherwise, seemed like a year to us. This is This is too subjective to be mentioned. So, if you want this sentence to be academic, you need to delete it. But it seemed like a year to us. And then at last the apartment stopped shaking. At last. When? When did it stop shaking? You need to give the time to cite the exact hour, minute at which the apartment stopped shaking. Otherwise, it would be unacademic. For a few seconds, well, that's another issue. How many seconds? Few is not measurable. Few to me could be different from few to you. If I ask you, if I ask a group of people to write a number representing what they think is few, some of them might write 4, others might write 7, 5, 6. Few depends on, because few means different things to different people, different numbers to different people. So you have to mention, if you want to be academic about this sentence, you have to mention a specific number. How many seconds? We were too scared to move, but we quickly made sure that nobody was injured. Next sentence is, then we were on the cell phone calling our parents. Well, it would be better to say, this is again too conversational. So it would be better to say that afterwards, or then we contacted our parents, or we used our cell phones to contact our parents, instead of saying we were on the cell phone calling our parents. Style would be more academic, because it would be more formal. We were thankful that like us, they were safe. Now, this is again the sentence structure, the style is not academic. We don't say we were thankful that like us, they were safe in scientific research papers. It would be better to say they informed us, because how did they know they were safe? They called them. So they informed us that they were safe. And it's better to make this part of the previous sentence and go something like, and they informed us, we contacted our parents, and they informed us that they were safe. Next, we checked the apartment, and luckily, there was very little damage. Now, luckily, is not a word to use in academic writing, so we'd better delete it. Next, we checked the apartment, and there was very little damage, but then again we have the problem with the word little, very little damage. What was damaged? He's not specific about what was damaged. So very little, again, is a relative, immeasurable word that we should avoid. We have to mention the damages to be clear. The next sentence is nothing was broken except for a few teacups and dinner plates. Nothing was broken, that's fine, but except for is fine. A few teacups and dinner plates. Now, a few is just like a little. How many teacups and how many dinner plates were broken? To be academic, you have to give me a number. Although nothing, you see, numerical data is very important in scientific research. Although nothing terrible actually happened to us, living through that earthquake was a scary experience that none of us will ever forget. Now, none of us will ever forget is an opinion. So it would be too subjective to include in this sentence. So we'd better delete it if we want this sentence to be academic. How can you tell that none of you are going to forget this experience? We cannot fetch data from the future. We have to wait and see, and only then we can be sure that you will forget it or not. So, as is, we have to delete this phrase in order to render this sentence, the closing sentence, academic. So this is how I teach this passage and other passages from this series and other series. I always expose the students to both elements, the academic elements and the unacademic elements in the passages they read for their homework and in class assignments, in order to show them what's good and what's bad, and then later on they will use this information, this knowledge, to generate good academic paragraphs. I hope this mini model was interesting, and I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you very much for your attendance, and thank you again for having me here, and goodbye.